So in this data model, I have an e-commerce table. There are some facts about purchases people made. I have a table with order IDs. I will connect that now via the order ID. I have a calendar table to filter in by the dates and so on. And I have a countries dimension table where I can filter by countries. And I have one measure in the model, so the sum of the revenue and the sum of the revenue past year. And now I will show you how you can use the DAX Query View. Today I want to talk with you about the DAX Query View because I'm still receiving comments that people want to get better in DAX and learn some DAX. And in my opinion, the DAX Query View is the best tool to achieve that because you can follow step by step your DAX queries by using this view. So let's jump into Power BI and I will show you how it works. So here we are in Power BI and you can already see my data model. So in this data model, I have an e-commerce table. There are some facts about purchases people made. I have a table with order IDs. I will connect that now via the order ID. I have a calendar table to filter in by the dates and so on. And I have a countries dimension table where I can filter by countries. And I have one measure in the model, so the sum of the revenue and the sum of the revenue past year. And now I will show you how you can use the DAX Query View. You will find it here to do some evaluations and to create some DAX. So the first thing we will need in the DAX Query View is an evaluate, because we want to evaluate some things. And the first thing you can say is we want to evaluate the sum of the sales in the e-commerce, and you can run that and you will get an error. So the pretty first thing you have to know about this view is that this view can only display tables or columns. So to retrieve single values, you need to add a row, name it result, and then you can run the sum of the sales and you will get a result. So now we know the sum of the sales by just using the DAX Query View. What can we also find out? We can also find out where this sum of sales belongs. For this, we will create a table. So we will say summarize. And the table we want to summarize is the e-commerce table. And what do we want to see in this table? So we want to see the order IDs. I'll move this over. And I think the order date. And I think we want to see the sum of the sales. And then we will run the query and you will get again an error. We get an error because the sum of the e-commerce sales also needs a name. So we add a name, we name it revenue, and the revenue will be the sum of the sales. Then we go to run. And now you can see the revenue for the single orders and the order date. And now we want to also add the country of the countries table. And as these two tables are connected, we can access the country, although we are summarizing the e-commerce tables. So we click on run and we can see this query now. So also the countries are added. So what if we want to use the measure in here? What we can do also is we can say summarize all of that, add columns here. We want and say we want to add the revenue as the sum of the revenue. Click on run and you will see here that you get again the sum of the revenue. So now we will test if you can change this here into, let's say, the sum of the sales, like we had it before. And you will see that this is not working. Because if you work with an add columns here, you also need here a measure that can evaluate the row context. And as this is only the sum of the e-commerce sales, you can't evaluate the row context here anymore because it will evaluate the sum of all the sales. So it will write the same value in all the cells. And we will also add the customer ID now. And now you can also see the customer ID and the revenue, but for the revenue, we will correct this again to the sum of the revenue to get the right values again. What you can do now, we will take this as a variable. We will name this table orders. And now let's say I want to have some columns out of this table because I only want to see 1 or 2 columns. So I will say reduce table. Reduce table is the select columns from the table orders because I need the table. And now I can type in the column I want to select, and I want to have, let's say, the revenue and the customer ID, and then we will click, and let's say I want to have the revenue, and then I need a return to see what I get back, and I will return the reduced table. Then I click on run, and now I can see all the revenues I had calculated before. So you see that this is still a list, and now I want to have the maximum out of this list, and to get the maximum, I will need a new variable. It will be the max revenue, and it will be the max out of the reduced table, the maximum revenue, and it will be the revenue, and then I will run it, and you see I will get an error because I'm trying again to read out a single value which is not allowed, so I need a row, a result, and then I can read out the maximum. I click on run, and now I know that the maximum revenue I had in the model were 6,235. What I could also do in this query is I could say, show me all the orders that are bigger than 6,000. So we will say the reduced table will be a filter of the table orders, and we want to filter by the revenue bigger than 6,000. And then we want to return the reduced table. So click on run. And you can see that there is only one order that had a revenue bigger than 6,000, which is too less at the moment. So we will go back to 5,000 and see what's happening. Perfect. If we go to 5,000, you can see that you have more order IDs that have a revenue bigger than 5,000. What we want to do now is we want to have a list of these e-commerce orders that have a revenue that is bigger than 5,000. And by doing so, we add a variable, rename it list 5,000. And this is a concatenate X from the table, the reduced tables. The expression we want to have is the order ID, and the delimiter we want to have is, let's say, a comma. And then we will go back to the list, copy that down, click on run. And also here we get an error because we will here also produce a single value. So again, you know it, a row, a result, comma, and the list. And if you click on run now, you can see that you have here in this list all the values concatenated into one cell. So this is one option what you can do with the DAX Query View. A second option you can do is you can go to e-commerce, click on quick queries, and you can say, show me the column statistics, and then you will get a statistic for all your columns. So you can see the row IDs, the count of them. So there are over 50,000, the distinct values. So you can see that this row ID is distinct. You can see how many null values are there. So 0, you can see the minimum and the maximum, and so on. I often use this when I want to have some information about my data in the tables that I can only get very hard out of Power Query, because in Power Query I can only see the top 1000 rows. And so often this works a lot better. And now in the e-commerce, for example, you can see that you have 51,274 order IDs, and you have 25,718 distinct values. And what you can do now also, you can check how many distinct values you have in the order ID itself. So you go to the order ID, do the same here, go to Quick Queries, show column statistics, and you can see that you have more distinct values than you had here because 10 values are missing. And what you can do now, if you want to find that out, you can go to a new query, go to evaluate, can go to accept, and then you need the left table. The left table will be all my values in the order IDs because I already know that these were more. So I take the longer table, and the right table will be the values of the e-commerce order IDs. And if I run this query, I will get a list of the values that are missing in the e-commerce order ID tables. You can see these are 10 values, which means that for these 10 values, there will be no facts in the e-commerce order ID table, which is a pretty good use case for the DAX Query View, I think, because if you did these evaluations, you can immediately find out what's missing and what's going on and take some actions. What you could also do is you can go to Quick Queries, go to Show Top 100 Rows, and see your top rows to explore the data, to find out how the structure is without going back to the table view. But I do not use that often. I stick to the column statistics most time. Then the next thing what is possible, you can go to define all the measures in a table. So we go to the measure table, go to define all measures in this table, and you can see here how your measures are defined and calculated. You can also see that in the TMDL view, but in the TMDL view you can see a little bit more because you will also have some metadata about the format of the measure, about the table it lives in, about the folder it lives in, and so on. But here you can already see how your measure is calculated, and you can also make some changes here, which is pretty great for copying measures without rewriting everything. So you could also say, this is the measure sum revenue, which is the sum of the sales, but I want to name it now, let's say sum revenue overall. Then you can go on update the model with the changes, update model, and you can see that the measure is renamed. So I hope I could show you today some possibilities how you could use the DAX Query View for your work, what's possible with it, what's not so easy with it, and give you a general overview. So if you liked the video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. Hope to see you on my channel soon and wish you a great day now. Bye bye.